Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning to all. Before we start, for all Muslim, let us recite Al-Fatiha so that this workshop get blessing from Allah and run smoothly. Al-Fatiha. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last day of UKM UNESCO workshop on media literacy, media information literacy for academics, which are organized by the Empowerment of Media Literacy and Digital Content Research Cluster and mentioned FSSK UKM. Greetings to Dr. Emma, Chair of Mention. Special greetings to our invited speakers, Associate Prof. Dr. Sabariah Mohamed Salleh, Special Officer in Media Section for Executive Director, Economic Action Council in Economic Planning Unit, Prime Minister's Office, and Dr. Musairi Samani as columnist media, Aminda Media Akbar Suara Sarawak. Thank you to both speakers and participants to be able to join us today. Okay, just a quick reminder to all participants, the registration form link is available in the chat box for your action. For today's session, we will start with Dr. Sabariah as the first speaker, followed by Dr. Mus. And after their talk, there will be a question and answer session. Okay, please write down your question in this in the chat box, or you may ask directly later. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the speakers. Yeah, Associate Prof. Dr. Sabariah Mohamed Salleh. Dr. Sabariah is an expert in media and information literacy. She holds a doctorate from the University of Vienna in the area of journalism and communication science. She recently completed a research with UNESCO, mapping media information literacy education policy and practices in Malaysia. She also translated UNESCO's handbook, Journalism, Fake News and Disinformation into Bahasa Melayu. That's great, Dr. Sab. She has undergone numerous sponsored trainings by Google, UNESCO, WHO, and US Department of State, which makes her highly knowledgeable and competent in MIL. She is also a university supervisor for Fact Check Lab, Malaysia's first independent fact-checking organization. Okay, without further ado, I handed the session to Dr. Sabariah with her speech on mapping of media and information literacy education in Malaysia, exploration of policies and practices. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first speaker, Dr. Sabariah. Over to you, Dr. Sab.
Thank you so much, Dr. Normah. Thank you so much to Dr. Azol and the research team for inviting me to be a speaker. I feel so grateful to be able to share whatever I have learned before and also share my past experiences in doing media information literacy research with UNESCO. So actually the title of this talk is actually based on research which I did with UNESCO. But before I go any further, let me just share my screen so that I can share the PowerPoint, which I have. All right. Hold on. Okay. So to start off, I will talk about a bit about the information disorder. I believe Dr. Ming has somewhat spoken about it as well, but I will just talk about it to give more context on the MIL education in Malaysia. So at this age, anyone and everyone can be a content creator. I can be a content creator. You can be a content creator. If I'm not mistaken, like Dr. Emma also has a YouTube channel in which she shares her experience as a educator. So some of the popular YouTuber or people who share their knowledge on the internet includes Ryan's World, which is just a small child who shares his toy reviews, and it's very popular even among my kids. Also, people also share information on WhatsApp groups. Like, a lot of people just share whatever they get from WhatsApp, which they think is credible, which they think, they feel like it's their duty or as a responsible friend or family member to share whatever knowledge they feel is important. There are also fitness influencers, even people who establish their own so-called TV channels, TV baru, or something which is popular during the MCO, which is the masa apa tak jadi hari ni. Everyone and anyone can share whatever they cook or which did not turn out well. And even our very popular entrepreneur Vivi Yusuf also started out with a blog, Proud Duck, and then eventually started her business empire. So a lot of people can share information, any information on the internet. So there are just so many information available that it causes an infodemic in which there's an influx of information which can be true or not true. It can be false or it can be credible. So there's just so many things that people have to digest, have to determine, like what is true, what is not, is it believable, is it not? So it causes this infodemic, which is something like a pandemic, but it's more of like an information pandemic. Okay, so the overabundance of information flying around that some people are taking advantage of this to make money. So do you know this guy? Does anybody know this person? Okay, so this guy is actually based in Macedonia, and he claimed to be a person who helped Trump win the previous election, not the recent one, the previous election. Okay, what does he do? He comes from a small town of only about 40,000 people. And what he does is that he establishes websites which shares this information. And this information related to, trying to make Trump looks good. So he establishes hundreds and hundreds of websites. And how he gets money, he has no political interest at all. What he's interested in is just money. So what he does is that he finds a real story, a real news article, and sensationalize the news article by peppering it with disinformation and misinformation. And then he will publish it on his hundreds of websites. And then he will get people to do fake accounts and register fake accounts in Facebook and all that, and they will share these website links for other people to view. And he managed to get, like, I think, millions of viewers. And he is so successful that he now owns his business and claims himself to be a Facebook strategist, Facebook marketing strategist. He has a few people who he calls students, and these people are making millions, as in they own yachts, they have Porsches, they have Maseratis, they even bought an island. That is how rich they are, when and the money that they get from just simply spreading misinformation and disinformation and getting people to click on their website. So that's how they get the money. So this is very worrying. So what can we do? I mean, as educators, what can we do, to help with this, to curb this from happening? Because we have students, and our students are communication students who are future journalists. We don't want them to misuse their power and spreading this just to get money. So what can we do? So before talking about that, I would like to, explain about the terminology of fake news, because I remember Dr. Chang actually posed this question last week, in which he said, like, why is it called fake news when it is news? So if you look in the handbook written by UNESCO, they actually mentioned that the term fake news is an oxymoron, in which it's such an irony to call news, which is information, which is supposed to be credible, which is supposed to be, valid and from like a good source, from a trustable source, fake, in which it is, an imposter content, not genuine, and also fooling people. So it's very irony to call something which is, information, which is credible, to be not genuine. It's an oxymoron by itself. Okay, so scholars actually, what they did was they divided false information into three categories, which is misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. So I just wanted to share like some examples, localized example, because the book do have examples, but they are not Malaysian examples. They are more related to, countries abroad, Western countries. So one example of misinformation is when this tourists, I think in 2015, Mount Kinabalu experienced an earthquake. There was an earthquake, and then it was found out that a few tourists were actually naked on the mountain, and some locals said because the spirits of the mountains were angry, and that's why there was an earthquake. So there was this one guy. His name is Emil Kaminsky, and what he did was he claimed on social media that he was one of the tourists who was naked on the mountain. But he got away. Like the rest of the tourists were caught by the police, but he got away. So he even showed, his flight tickets and then where he stayed and all that. As a result, a lot of there were Sabahan who were so angry that actually went to the motel to look for him. But later on, and this story was actually shared by local newspapers, our mainstream newspapers, NST, The Star, and all that. But later on, he said he was just trolling and he wasn't even in Malaysia to begin with. So the act of these newspapers sharing this information is a form of misinformation, because they think the newspapers were not aware that the information they shared were not true. Okay, and then this information is when you share information which is not true. You share it even though you know that it's not true, and this can be related to this birthday rally in 2017, if I'm not mistaken, in which a lot of our mainstream newspapers downplayed the real number of people attending the rally. And then for malinformation is how you use information in a different context. I mean, the thing is real, but you use it in a different context to benefit you. For instance, that Dr. Sterum, this was during a by-election, I can't remember what, in 2019, in which he actually produced a video and he was talking about anak bulu-bulu, referring to his fur kids. Okay, and he was being genuine and talking about it, but people somehow use that to do like a political killing kind of thing, like saying that he's not credible, he's not good enough to be in the election and all that. So these are the different types of misinformation and disinformation. And COVID-19 has not made the disinformation and misinformation phenomena in our country any better. Even our minister actually, once shared, drinking warm water would be good, to avoid COVID-19. And he spoke about this on national TV. And this has been refuted by WHO. So even someone who is supposedly very, very credible tends or is able to share misinfo and disinfo. So this is worrying. Like, what does the government do then? So the government actually helps by, having this website sebenarnya.my, and then even like, and this is also, being done in other countries like Singapore, in which they have factually.sg, and then in Indonesia, even the ministry also has like a fact-checking website to help curb the further dissemination of misinfo and disinfo. This is an example of an Indonesian website. Okay, but as an educator, what can we do? What do we do? What can we do about this? So this is what I studied together with colleagues from Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. So what we did was we studied and tried to find out how has MIL been taught in our countries. And in this study, we found that there are some challenges in teaching MIL and teaching journalism. And I think that's what I want to touch about today, because I think we have discussed about, tools in teaching. Dr. Imad shared, creative tools in teaching and all that. And even Kada also shared about, the journalism education in Malaysia. So I thought I would touch more on the challenges faced when you teach MIL. And these are the challenges faced. I mean, I shared this. These are the challenges faced by the countries which are involved in the research as well. I think it's important to know, because we need to know what we're getting ourselves into, because we are going to start, inculcating these things, MIL. So what are the kinds of challenges that we may face? Okay. So the first one that I would like to touch about is about ownership and control versus fair and balance. You see, when I teach, because Dr. Emma and I teach news writing, news and features writing. So when we teach news and feature writing, we always talk about, getting the right and credible resources, being fair and balanced when you write your news and all that. But how far can our students, actually do this when they work? Because speaking about my own experience, when I was, a reporter or journalist in a newsroom at NST, I have, heard that things like, please do not cover this company because they did not advertise with us. Or something like, oh, please delete this paragraph because it doesn't look good on certain politician or certain businessman who is closely related to the newspaper. Or sometimes it's like, please cover this story because the group editor-in-chief's son is doing this event. So these are the things that, they are faced, although there are no empirical evidence, but how do our students, go through this? How can we help them go through this? On top of that, there are strict regulations in our countries. For instance, in Philippines. So in Philippines, there's this very famous lady called Maria Ressa. So Maria Ressa is the founder of this news website called Rappler. What they do is that they try to uncover the drug, how Duterte have this, trying to stop drug abuse and drug syndicates. And it is said to be violent. So what Maria does is that she gives the story from the other side, not just the government, but also the people on the streets, the people who are facing this, killings and all that, who are, watching all these killings and all that. So Duterte wasn't happy with that. And the government pressured Maria in forms of persecution. They tried to persecute her for tax evasion, for libel, and then Duterte even announced how Rappler is a fake news website and all that. So this gives pressure to Maria and her colleagues. Also is an example to other news agencies to not mess with the government. Don't report things that we don't like. Okay, and in Thailand, there is also there is a law called lese majeste in which nothing can be reported about the king or even its their their family. So even if there is a misuse of government funds, for instance, by the royalty, you cannot report on it, or else you will have to face persecution. So in Malaysia ourselves, one of our example is the Official Secrets Act, in which in 1985, I think about 3 people were persecuted because of Official Secrets Act, and they were given heavy fine because they revealed information about our military. So my question is that if we have all these rules and regulations, how are our students, or are we ourselves, or the media practitioners, supposed to be fair and balanced in their reporting? On top of that, another thing that is controlling our media industry or controlling this information content creator is advertising. So high page traffic equals to more advertisers, which is what that guy from Macedonia is doing. How do you increase traffic? By spreading viral news. One instance that I would like to share is an experience by my own student who's working for Erin Sakura, which is a website, a supposedly news site. So what they do is that they actually scour through the internet, find viral news, and lift the information, for instance, from the caption and all that, and create a story. They do not even interview, the content creator, I mean, the person who first published the so-called story, viral story. What they do is they just copy and paste whatever information in the caption or in the Facebook status or in their, Twitter profile, and write it into a story. So I actually asked my student, like, what do you feel about it? I mean, that's not the way we do. I mean, a real journalist, that's not how you do. How ethical is that? And then what he said was, he knows that, and he actually asked his boss, his editor, if he can interview the person who wrote that post. And the editor's response is that that's not how we do work here. So you see, like, our students, or we know what is right, but it is difficult to do what is right because of this ownership and control. And that's a challenge that we must face. So, and it brings this, question to me, like, is ethical journalism a utopian idea? Because you know what's right, but you somehow it's very difficult and challenging to do what's right. So it's like a utopian idea. Okay. Next is another challenge is digital divide. So digital divide, I think all of us know about digital divide, about how, different people from different places have different access to the to internet, to technology. So in my research, what I did was I interviewed Dr. Madeline Burma, who does a lot of work with people in Sarawak. And I asked her about, what does she think important? Is it important to inculcate MIL skills among people in Sarawak? And then she said that probably in the cities, but it's not the same in the rural areas, because their priorities might be different. And then she said that there are nomads who are still nomads, who do not even care about having a smartphone, or do not care about having internet and all that. So priorities for people living in different places are different. So this is something that as educators, we must be aware of. Okay. And an instance of, I think everybody knows this case with Fiona, who had to climb a tree to get proper internet connection for her to sit for exams. So this speaks about how internet or digital technology might not reach certain places in our country yet. Okay. So in my interview with MCMC as well, they also said in Malaysia, the focus is more on rolling out infrastructure and getting people to know the basics of using computer. And this can be seen in the school curriculum. And MIL is not in our school curriculum, and it's also not in Thailand, in Indonesia school curriculum, but in Philippines, they actually have a subject for MIL. And in Japan, they do have modules in which teachers can use to teach MIL in schools. Okay. Another challenge is that experts are working in silo. What does it mean? This means that there are experts in media and communication, but there are also experts in information science who are also working towards trying to inculcate MIL skills. There are also people in the government sector, in the private sector, NGOs and all that, but we are not working together. So padahal our aim is the same, to inculcate MIL skills, but we are not working together. So we are working in silos. So it'll be better if we could work together, because we are having the same aim, right? So this is expert working in silo. Okay, and then another thing is cultural norms. So as we know, our culture is more collectivistic. According to Hofstede, we are a collectivistic culture. We have a very, high respect for our people who are older than us. And as a result, even if we teach MIL skills, there's also this fear among our children, among our students, even among ourselves, to actually, say that, hey, this information which is shared is not true, because we respect whoever who is sharing. It can be our moms, our dads, our grandmas, and all that. So it's you're putting like our student or ourselves in a difficult situation, to actually point out that what is shared is not right. So that's part of our cultural norms. Respect, filial piety. You cannot, out of respect, you don't talk about it. You just keep quiet. And all that. Also, one of the cultural norms is that the act of sharing because you feel like you care. And this usually happens in WhatsApp groups. You get a lot of forwarded messages because you think, I think this is an important information for you to know. And then when we say it's not true or all that, then we will, they will say that, no, this is just me caring and sharing. So it's up to you to decide if the information is true or not. So this is part, I think this is part of our culture. And another thing that I would like to share about is that in schools, which I forgot to mention, in our schools, we do not have any specific subject on MIL. We do not have any specific subject on media and information literacy. But what we do have in schools is subjects like TMK for primary schools, and in secondary schools there is Asas Science Computer and Science Computer. So, but these subjects, what they do is they share more about how to create PowerPoints, how to do programming, and all that. And just one tiny bit in a Form 5 curriculum for Science Computer, which talks about cyberbullying, and privacy and internet safety, but it's just like a small chunk. And the thing is, not every student in Malaysia takes Science Computer because that's a very selective subject. Only certain schools offer. So there is still, that need to inculcate, within our students, within our children, within the young people, on how to actually be able to be more discerning, more critical, and more aware of how to, be engaged with the media messages, and being able to discern between what is correct information, right information, and what is false information, what is the truth, and what is misinfo, disinfo, or malinfo. Okay, so within our study, we came up with a few suggestions in which we can help to, face these challenges. So one of our suggestion is to strengthen fact-checking initiatives. So fact-checking initiative in Malaysia, I think last year, MyCheck and Fact Check Lab was just established. So MyCheck is from Bernama. I mean, as we heard Ali Imran talk about MyCheck, and then there's Fact Check Lab, which is an independent fact-checking organization. So just to share with you, students from our mention are actually part of this fact-checking initiative. So 5 students have been selected to go through training, fact-checking training with Google News Initiative. And then what they do now is that, they get assignments to fact-check, and their fact-check has been published. Before, I will share the link of their fact-check. So what does this do? This actually gives them awareness on, that not everything shared online is true. And also it creates this awareness, on how to double check, triple check, quadruple check on any information they come across, on their Instagram, on their Facebook, via WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and whatever. So strengthening fact-checking initiatives can not only depend on organization, but also among us educators in trying to inculcate this need to fact check whenever they come across information which might be dubious and all that. And another suggestion is to have formal accreditation for media practitioners. What does this mean? Okay, as we know, not all journalists are trained media practitioners. Not all journalists has studied MESCOM or studied journalism or studied media and communication studies during their degree. So they might not know, the relevant laws and regulations and being an ethical journalist and all that. Okay, because I do know, some journalists who graduated in statistics, in history and all that, being a journalist. So this formal accreditation is somewhat like, lawyers getting accredited to go to the bar. And so media practitioners probably should go through like a certain training to be formally accredited so that they actually know, not to be biased and all that. And this is our role. The third one is to educate how to use media as an empowerment tool. Okay, right now, people are just sharing probably out of their satisfaction and all that. So we need to create like this awareness that how actually we can use media to empower us ourselves. How the young people can use media to empower themselves, to champion their rights, to champion their belief and all that, instead of just, doing some dancing TikTok or sharing, their latest picture and all that. Okay. So how do we use that as an empowerment tool? And another thing which I think is very important is to create a formal structure to ensure that MIL effort is sustainable. I mean, I know we have MACE, which is the Malaysian Educators, Communication Educators, which I think is very good. But because MIL is not just media educators, it also involves, people from the media industry, people from the information science specialization. It also involves health, epidemiologists, and a lot of other areas. So a formal structure would be able to somehow combine all these brains, all this expertise to ensure that MIL effort is not just like a one-off thing, not just during this UNESCO training, but it continues and expands and to be further on. Okay, that is all. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be able to answer. I can be contacted also via my email address and my Instagram account or my Facebook. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Normah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saab. Thank you for your valuable input on the media education in Malaysia. Yes, I agree that we must work together in order to inculcate and educate MIL across generation. Okay, so thank you again, Dr. Saab. For participant, please write down your question in the chat box. The speaker will answer later in the Q&A session. Okay, so next, I would like to introduce our second speaker, Dr. Samani. Okay, Dr. Chairil is currently a columnist with Suara Sarawak, a leading Malay language newspaper in Sarawak. He retired as an associate professor at the Department of Communication, Faculty of Language and Communication, University of Malaysia, Sarawak. Before joining UNIMAS, he was with Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia for 23 years. He was my supervisor. He was a journalist with one of the local mainstream media after graduating with a Bachelor's of Arts from University of Malaya in 1983. Okay, he got his Master of Science, Journalism as Mass Communication from Iowa State University in 1988 and Doctor of Philosophy from University of Malaya 2003. His current research interests are media studies, publishing and journalism. Without further ado, I handed the session to Dr. Mus with the title Pedagogies in Teaching and Learning of Media and Information Literacy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our second speaker, Dr. Chairil Samani.
Thank you, Prof. Normah. Thank you, UKM, UNESCO for inviting me. Is my audio clear to all of you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm sharing my screen now. All right. Yes, I hope you can see the screen. Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you. Okay. The thing with me is this technology thing is beyond me already. I'm glad that I already retired. Uh, and in wondering why I'm being called to share my knowledge with all of you in on this big topic about pedagogies in teaching and learning of MIL. This is one thing. This is actually a very big topic for me to handle. And when I first joined UKM, I remember that how do I face my class? What do I do? How do I teach the subject? What are the subject matters? What are the content? How do I approach the content that is the course curriculum that was given to me? And because I wasn't trained in any field of education, I'm trained in writing. My first degree, second degree was in journalism and communication, and my third degree was in publishing. So the thing is, I wasn't taught on how to teach. And after leaving UKM, joining UNIMAS in 2011, the first thing I found out that when I joined UNIMAS is all the young lecturers, okay? All the young lecturers are required to undergo PGD, which is a postgraduate diploma in teaching and learning. I say this is really good because it helps you in how to handle the class, how to teach, and how to help your student to learn. And this is something that is not being practiced by most of the universities in Malaysia, and except in UNIMAS, if I'm not mistaken. Unless you're a teacher in school, if you're teaching in school, then you have a degree in a diploma in teaching and a diploma in education, then it comes naturally to you. But the thing with me is I must say I was uh, fortunate and unfortunate, because the thing is fortunate I don't have to go through the PGD. Unfortunate because then I missed the opportunity to learn because they only required for the young lecturers. And after I've been talking to some of the young lecturers who went through the program, they say it is a really tough program. It is about handling your classes at the same time and attending the PGD classes at the same time. And how do you balance up both of this? Because then I asked them what is in the content of this subject. See, they told me an interesting thing, because when you talk about pedagogies in teaching and learning, there is three basic components in it. Okay, what are the basic components? We have the component of, hold on, I need to open my slides. Okay, we have the component of teaching, you have the component of the content, and you have the component of the learners, your students. And way back when I was teaching in UNIMAS or in UKM, we do not have a specific course called media information literacy. So do we need to have such a course? If we feel that we shouldn't have such a course, can we incorporate this component in the courses that is being taught? Okay, so this is the things that I will try to touch it, because when we are as lecturers, pedagogy is defined as the art, science, and profession of teaching and learning. Okay.
Sorry, Dr. Mus, the slide doesn't appear on the screen.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Is it now? Is it on now?
No, it's still the title.
Okay, good job. Let me see. That's why I think I'm glad I'm no longer an academic, because I feel that all this technology is actually
Okay, now it's okay.
now it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You have slide number 1 and the definition, is it?
Yes.
Okay. When you look at the definition of what is pedagogy, okay, as is being defined by Merriam-Webster, okay,
It's blank.
is it blank again?
Yes.
Ya Allah, Tuhanku, sabar je lah aku dengan teknologi. Is it okay now?
No.
Oh, hold on. Is it okay now?
No.
Hmm. Let me see how.
Boleh relax sangat dekat pantai tu.
Kejap meeting control dia tadi yang Luna tu lagi bagus.
Mungkin boleh bagi slide kepada admin ke?
Kejap. Dah.
Okay.
Okay lah?
Okay.
Alright. Dia because saya pakai 3 skrin di sini. Saya tu sebabnya dia jadi kacau pun agak. Alright.
Hebat daripada lecturer 3 skrin lagi.
Because kalau saya buat kerja, even writing actually, it is easy for me to open 3 screen at the same time. One screen is for my writing, the other screen is for my 2 other screens for my research that I can look on the internet. Okay, so that's why I use 3 screens. So at first that if I touch that button, it shifts the screen sharing to something else. Okay. All right. Back to these 3 components. So about teaching, content, and student. So that's why when we as academic, okay, me as a former academic, all right, when we teach, there's always several approaches to it. Because since I wasn't trained as an educator, I was coming from the perspective of
Chairil.
Kejap. Boleh ke ni?
Okay.
Dapat tak?
Okay.
Okay
Dah. Okay.
Dah dapat dah?
Dapat.
Okay, because bila dia jadi macam tu, saya dah kacau dah benda ni. Dapat dah?
Dapat.
Okay, alright. So, each lecturer comes with a different pedagogical approach. And this is one thing that, on reflection after I retired, that when we come to our class, we come with our own perspectives of things. If you are trained as a positivist, then the way you teach, you will be teaching that whatever you see is the reality. You're coming from the interpretative perspective, then you will start start to do your interpretation of a lot of things. And if you're a critical culturalist, then you will learn to teach differently. You will ask people your students to question everything. Because that is why when I was assigned to teach my journalism class previously in UKM, so when I was teaching them, I will expose them to what are the basic criteria of news. Okay, then there's those 7 basic criteria about currency, about novelty, and all sort of things. I'm not going to repeat it. I think all of you knows what is it. But when you teach that subject, when I was teaching that subject, this is my experience. When I was teaching the subject, I was telling my students, if we want to report objectively about an event, these are the criteria. I stopped short of telling the student that whatever criteria that you use will restrict the way you will present the news. I agree with Prof. Sabariah saying that when you work as a journalist, your freedom to report is circumvented by the fact that you're working with a newspaper organization. I agree. The newspaper organization will have its own perspective on what can be published and what ought to be published. I'm not going to argue with that, because if you want to publish what you want to do it, what you want to say, then you will have to have your own newspaper. Because in anywhere and in everywhere, in anywhere in this world, if you go to America, if you just look at what happened in Capitol Hill the other day, how the American newspaper, the mainstream American newspaper, was reporting what happened prior to Trump leaving the White House. He was trying to rewrite history. He was asking his people, his voters, to riot. And what did the American press say? What did they report? They did not report objectively. Yes, objective according to the criteria, but did they tell the true story? Because there was, if you go to the internet and search, there are other voices saying you're being unfair to the Black Americans. Had it been that the riot was instigated, was acted upon, the mob was from the blacks, how would the reporting will be? How would it be different? Would you start castigating these people? That's what happened in America. So those are ideals, okay? Ideals about the utopian ideals about being free to report everything. But in actual fact is we cannot report what we like, because if we are working with a particular newspaper, whether we like it or not, we must toe the line. We have to follow what they want. Okay, so that is one thing about teaching journalism. Because when I was teaching journalism back then, the internet was just growing. The question of ownership belongs to the elites. Okay, who owns the media organization is the elites. The elites in society have total control. You have YouTube was unknown. The blogs was unknown then. You have all these pedagogical tools available now, which is unknown then. And so when I was looking at Prof. Emma, your presentation the other day, oh my God, she's so at ease with these new technologies. Okay, so those are the things when you look back. When you look back at all those what's happening in our time and in the world, is we find that in most of the cases, the organization cannot control the flow of information now. Previously, yes, it is centered on the ruling elite. Now, you see the way our students are learning, our societies are reading, the way they view information, they are no longer tied to any particular newspaper. They do not get their news from the newspaper. Their information is gathered from all the other various sources. Their platform for delivering information no longer belongs to the ruling elite. And this is a big problem. And how do we make full capabilities, make use of opportunities to disseminate information to the masses? Previously, it was easy. Previously, when we just had our TV, way back in the 60s, everybody was switched on to the TV, there was glued to the television. But nowadays, nobody is glued to the television anymore. In fact, if you go to the shopping complex, the price of television has gone down because people are not buying newspaper. The people are not buying television. But what they are buying now is actually smartphone, which is a form of TV 2.0 to me, where they access television programs wherever they are, whenever they want to, they are at liberty to do. So this is the thing: is how do you teach within this changing times? Because you have your lecture, you have the lecturer, you have the content that you need to teach, and you have the students who have the ability to access, analyze, create media. So now we do not have total control. They are accessing a lot more information. Because nowadays, with this pandemic COVID-19, we are forced to teach online. And I had the opportunity to teach my last 2 semesters online. And I say this is not something that I would like to do all the time. Because it is difficult, because because the problem of access is some of the students do not have internet access. Some of the students have internet access, but limited capabilities in terms of how much they can access the internet and the speed. And at the same time, the burden to provide all these infrastructures falls on the lecturers. So you at home will have to have your own computers, your home internet access, and with the PDB, pendidikan dan pembelajaran di rumah ni, which is being implemented now, the burden is shifted on teaching, not to the teachers at school, but the burden of teaching your children is on you, on the parents. And parents are expected to know all the subjects that the children are taking. And to me, that is mind-boggling. When I look at the syllabus of these young children, 3 of them, 3 young, 2 girls and one boy, when they go through their classes, their material is A. I didn't go through this kind of material when I was in primary school. So this is mind-boggling, you see. So you are suddenly shifting the burden to teach your children on the parents. And then the funny thing is, the teachers will say, okay, today they will send me the WhatsApp message, and okay, today you go to this page and do this assignment and submit. So I was thinking, I was asking myself, where's the teaching component? So that's why we can have access, because tapi not everyone has the same kind of access. And I am really fortunate when COVID-19 happened, Unify is already there in Kota Semarang. And to tell you honestly, Unify only existed in Kota Semarang 1 year before COVID-19. That means it was only available in 2018. Had Unify is only available in 2021, then the story will be different. How am I going to teach my students? So this is the things about when you talk about MIL, You have to define as an ability to access, analyze, create media. So that is why when I was teaching journalism, I was teaching according to the perspective that I have, how I was taught. But does that allows me to think critically? Am I asking my students? Am I teaching my students how to think critically? If you are stopped from reporting this way, can you do it a different way? Can you think about different things? So these are the things that which actually is very difficult to teach when you are not being trained as a teacher. Okay, so in when you look at all of this definition about pedagogy, it focuses on different and intersecting competencies to transform people interaction with information and learning environment, whether it's online or offline, freedom of information and expression. And when you look at MIL, you look at the constitute a composite set of knowledge. Are we teaching the correct knowledge? Are we teaching the whole knowledge? Are we being selective with the knowledge that we are exposing? Or it's constituted about skills. What are the skills? Okay, what are skills needed for them to be able to work within this current scenarios? What kind of attitudes that they must have? And what kind of competencies and practices that will allow effective access to analyze, to critically evaluate, interpret, use, create, and disseminate information. This is actually a big topic. And when I was given this topic, I say, how do you teach the subject when PGD they are taking it for 3 semesters and 1 more semester for micro teaching. So when you look at all this definition, I reflected on Porter when we were doing this research, me and the team with Prof. Normah in UKM and Dr. Azul and Dr. Latifah, who's already retired, and Prof. Farida. We found that media literacy involves 7 skills. One of it is analysis, evaluation, grouping, induction, deduction, synthesis, and abstracting. In all honesty, after reflecting on what I've done, after I retired, after teaching for 30 years, did I do all of this? Did I provide them? Did I provide my students with all the skills? I may touch on the surface, but I will, in all honesty, state that I did not cover everything. I will touch on the surface. We talk about the definition and everything else, but that's about it. Okay. So when we approach our class, okay, when I was approaching my class, okay, I was using the teacher-centered approach. I was the formal authority. I was the expert. I was the personal model. I remember the time when my students were late coming to class, I would argue with them. I say, these are the rules. You either come on time or you don't have to come. Okay? I think it's already passed. Because the thing is, nowadays, if you look at all the information that's available online, it will cover everything that we are teaching in all of the in any subjects that we are I mean that we too generalized, but even communication, you can surf the internet, you will find all the materials there. So I think it's about time the young generation, I think you're already into this, where you shift yourself to student-centered approach. And when in this case, you become the facilitator. You tell them where are these materials. That is why I feel that with this pendidikan dan pengajaran di rumah, the teachers should tell the parents Okay, the materials are here in the on which website, where, how do you access it? That is what we should do at the universities. We should become facilitators to knowledge, help them to find this material for themselves, because we need to tell them that the materials are all there and you need to really read it out. And you become the personal model. Then you can use cooperative learning, where you can learn with your student. Because when I was in America, I was surprised when I asked my lecturers back then about certain components, about certain subject matters, and when the subject matter is beyond their knowledge, you know what did they say? I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. Coming from Malaysia, like like all of you, to hear that from your lecturers is something that, hey, how come my lecturers doesn't know anything? This is simple thing, is it? Because I think they is being honest about what they know, and uh, how do they impart this kind of knowledge. So that is why when you look at the approach that I used to take, students are viewed as empty vessels who passively receive knowledge from their teachers, from their lecturers, through lectures and direct instruction, with an end goal of positive result for testing and assessment. So that's why we teach them at the end of the day, the end of the semester, we test them whether they know, they have learned or not. It physics on the knowledge of the teacher and how they impart this to the students. With student-centered learning, students become the active participant in their own learning process. We should in we should get them involved. That is why with COVID-19, we find that most of the students are not on campus. Learning at the university cannot be done if you are not on campus. Because when you interact with other students face to face, it is different when you interact online. When you are on campus, you find that all the materials, you have access to the lecturers, you have access to the books, you have access to all the infrastructures for you that is your learning process. That is why when I find that during COVID-19, when they start closing down the libraries, the students are not allowed to enter campus, I find that, oh my God, what's happening to Malaysia? And the this thing does not allow us this COVID-19 really stop. I mean, how does not allow the students to be able to interact with other colleagues, with their peers, to learn, to do all this knowledge sharing thing. So that is why when we teach with a student-centered approach, we need to demonstrate knowledge of content. They know what are the content. That's why we have our syllabus at the beginning of the semester of every course. We explain them what is and then switch the knowledge to the student, select suitable instructional strategies. And then if you are using online, then I must agree with Prof. Emma, that is the best approach, because then you need to get them to be involved in all these activities, and you have to design a coherent instruction. So when you look at all of this, you find that students are learning differently. We have 8 different, you look at Gardner theory of multiple intelligence, Howard Gardner developed this in 83. There are 8 ways in which people learn. One is visual spatial. Second is linguistic verbal. Visual spatial is people who are good at puzzle, maths, and direction. Linguistic verbal, they are good with words, both spoken and written. Interpersonal, the learner is very intuitive and is good at relationship. Intrapersonal, the learner is very reflective and self-evaluative. And then logical, mathematical, the learner is good with numbers and problem solving. Musical, the learner has a knack for rhythm and music. Bodily, kinesthetics, the learner is very hands-on and has a great hands-on and hand-eye coordination. And naturalistic, the learner is in tune with nature and the environment. We have different styles. We learn differently, and that's happening with our students. How do we cater for these different kinds of intelligence? How do we impart? Do all our students have all these 8 learning styles in them? Unfortunately, no, because then some of them are good visual, spatial, linguistic, verbal. Another person will be interested with interpersonal and intrapersonal. Okay, so when you look at this, another educationist says that he present a simple theory about learning. Is VARK, V-A-R-K, which is visual, oral, reading, writing, and kinesthetics. So how do we formulate a strategy on our part as lecturers, and to make sure that whatever we are being assigned, the content, all of you are expert content experts, you know your subject matter, and develop this and impart this knowledge and share this knowledge with your students, our lecturers, our future lecturers, our future journalists, future communication specialists, and everything else. All right. The thing is, no two students are the same. They are different in learning capabilities, and when you look at the different approaches about how to teach, we have 5 different approaches: constructivist, collaborative, inquiry-based, integrative, reflective. I think if you want to go and search on this, you can do it. All right. It's there on the internet. It is available. There's a lot of resources that's available. The pedagogical strategies, when you do about discussion, allows that whatever you are using, you are allowing students to process not only their own thoughts, but also to evaluate other people's opinion. Because when we are teaching nowadays, with the advance of the smartphone, when Steve Jobs created the smartphone, my students were taking their smartphone with me. So when I was teaching during prior to COVID, I noticed the fact that they are not listening to me, but at the same, they are doing several things. They are multitasking several things. They are listening to the lecture, but at the same time, they are searching in the internet, and they may be writing the email, they may be doing chatting. This is different things. There's a lot of things that's happening that we find that the people are no longer learning the way that I used to learn. When I was learning at the university back then, 30 years ago, I was more than 30 years ago. When I was in class, I would be very obedient, very disciplined. And nowadays, if you enter your classroom, I have students who are very vocal, who are very energetic. They can't focus for a long time. how do you cater with this kind of changes? All right, so that is why when I was assigned to talk about this subject about pedagogies, one thing that hit my mind instantly is we have we have done a lot of research at MIL. Can we learn from this? Can we include it in our teaching? So can we adopt it and make certain changes? So on this, I would like to emphasize the need for us to make sure that our teaching is reflective of what is being done locally. And I must agree with Prof. Sabariah that a lot of materials out there is about other countries. There are stories, there are research being done locally, and this is where we should make sure that we can impart this knowledge. I'm touching on two research that's been done, which I think could be implemented in what we call the collaborative learning, all right, or constructive learning process. The first research is by digital storytelling, engaging young people to communicate for media literacy, for digital media literacy. When you look at this is the study done by Professor Santi from University of Science Malaysia. How did she do this research? She had a group of children, school children. They need to produce a short 1 or 3 minute digital stories on any issues that they like. So they are given a tablet. They are taught on how to download this proper software, the application. They were taught basic about how to capture, edit, and she found out that these young children of ours, Malaysian school children, these secondary school children, are very knowledgeable. They are fast learners. They can adapt to the tablet so fast. This is what Steve Jobs calls intuitive learning, which is if you buy any smartphone and you give any smartphone to any child, a young child who's 3 years old, he or she will be able to use it within minutes. Why? Because it's all about intuitive. The interface is very intuitive. You just click and touch, and the kid, you'll be surprised that they know how to use the thing faster than I am. Okay, that's what I found. So with this digital storytelling, what Prof. Shanti was doing is that she found that the kids knows how to make this short video, and they were when after the session they were asked to reflect on what they learned. That the students found that they had a little bit of difficulties in using the application apps initially, but in the end they were, after given time, they were able to use it, and they would do because the digital story requires them to do this in a group work, 3 to 5 of them in one group. So they were sharing this same knowledge. Because the thing is, when you look at all these things, this is what I was saying initially. Because we as lecturers, we as researchers will always look at the phenomena from the perspective that how we were taught. Okay? And I was taught as a positivist After later on, I adopted interpretive stance. Later on, I will adopt the critical culture. It backs down on me, and when I was looking at this presentation, she did this presentation where at ICMAS last 2019, sorry, yeah, 2019. When she did the presentation, she was telling how the student learn. But I think there was one point that she missed. She should ask the student whose version of reality is presented in all these digital tools. Because when we teach, when we write, it is from our own perspective. That's why when you are working for any newspaper, and I'm a columnist with Suara Sarawak, I know the limitation. It's either I follow the limitation or I leave. So to me, I'm using the opportunities to become a columnist is to share my knowledge in communication and to share this with other people. I'm trying to shift theory and to apply it in basic, in real time, so that people understand what is communication theory. Because when you look at the whole world around us, especially with digital technologies now, previously you cannot catalog. You cannot catalog image. Okay. When I was looking at Ali Imran presentation the other day, it boils down for me now. The software engineers has created a wonderful tool that they can read an image, because previously research on information technology by all these digital engineers, software engineers, is you can read all the text. It's not a big problem, because you can read the text, you can classify. That's how Google developed. But now Google has introduced the tool where you can search a picture. In other words, the software is already available for you to search the image, and any given image. Before this, you cannot read. You want to read the image, you ask the computer to read the image. There wasn't any software that's available. So now, with this thing, we can search it. We can see where did the picture originated. It is available online. That's why Google has rewritten all the rules on how information is disseminated. Because if you look at Google, they have done a lot of things. They wanted to have this, what is called the virtual library. What is this virtual library? Is they want to catalog and digitalize all the books, all the millions of books in all the libraries in the world, and put it online. It is a good ambition, is a good objective, but whose content? Google doesn't own this content. That is the problem with Google, is they make money with others people content, OPC. That is why when we look at now in Australia, Facebook has taken the action of not sharing any news content that originated from Australia, including the government. Even though after that they start rewrite the program so that government information is still available on Facebook. But information that's available by the mass media in Australia is still not available on Facebook. But if you look at the model that Google is doing now is they are making money with other people's content. And you expect newspapers to make to go on making money to supply with information, and you are selling it, making money, but you don't want to share part of the income. So this is where the model of making money, the economics of newspaper organization has to be involved. The Google, Facebook, all the media social have to be involved in all these things, so that they must pay a certain portion, certain percentage, and Google is smart. They negotiated early with the Australian government and with the newspaper publishers in Australia to pay certain percentages. I think that is something that is good, and this is where I think Malaysia should lead. After this, we should ask for the same thing, because you cannot make money from other people's content without paying. That's why when they wanted to do the virtual library, it didn't materialize because all the publishers in the world did not agree, because you're infringing on the copyrights of all the publishers and all the writers. How are the writers going to make money if you're making money without sharing whatever you are learning, you are getting from selling this thing? And the final research that I would like to share will be done is by our dear friend, my Prof. Dr. Shahizad. He did a study on the Kinta story. He did analysis about the documentary. This is the documentary during the communist time in Malaysia, in the early years of Malaysia. So he was asking the students, how do you interpret the content? Okay, these are the things. You take real life example like what Prof. Ahmad did the other day was when you take this a snippet of the newspaper and ask them to evaluate whether this is fake news or what, is this true or what. Okay, so when Prof. Shaiza was doing this thing, they were able to interpret. But we should also ask and question and allow the student to ponder on the basic question that the technology is available, that's available in Malaysia is not available everywhere. And in our students, some of them are using the latest smartphone. And when you go to Sabah and Sarawak, you find that the students are not that wealthy, and they are not using the latest technology, but there are also pockets of them who are using better smartphone than I am when I was still teaching. So with all this technology, it offers an objective. Does it offer an objective representation of reality? And whose reality are we talking about? So this is the thing, when we look at all these technologies, we must ask the student, hey, you look at this technology. What does it do to you? Okay, because when you look at the technologies, these technologies are imported into Malaysia. It's either produced by Japan, it's either produced by Americans or European countries, but it's still overseas. We are mere users. We are not creators of these technologies. When are we going to be creators of all this new technology, innovate new technologies which will be in the forefront? In the end, we will be left behind in this technological race. Okay, so with that, with these two research, there's other research. I would not want to repeat what have been presented by all the other esteemed colleagues of mine in the last 2 days, and this is the third day. Because these are examples that you can pick from the Malaysian research, and UKM is on a great foundation because now you have the journal Komunikasi, which is Scopus based, so you get all the best research, all the best researchers in Malaysia who wants to publish it in that journal. So you can find this research, and we should try to incorporate all this research in our teaching, because then we will not be using other people's knowledge to teach Malaysian, because we cannot teach Western journalism incorporate totally in Malaysia, because when we look at the world around us, we find that there are discrepancies in how American publish their own papers, and we have to live with what we have now. We may have to, if we don't agree with that, we have the internet, we have the blogs, but the problem is when you write blogs, who are the audience? How do you monetize this? How do you commoditize this? These are questions that will have to be answered, and you cannot be living on air. You have to have money to live. Can you make money just on blogs? Can you make money just on uploading YouTube? These are the questions that uh, I I offer to all of you to reflect and to think when you are teaching students about media information literacy, uh, MIL, not mother-in-law, is this thing about who you are, the lecturers, where you're coming from, because where you're coming from will definitely influence the way you teach, and the content that is available. Are you being selective in what you're teaching? Okay, this one I want to teach, this one I don't want to teach. Oh, this is beyond me. Then you'll be very selective the content, and finally the students. Where we have a change, the students are changing. We have to change with them. If we don't change with them, then it's a big problem. With that, I give the floor back to Prof. Normah. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moos, for your insight and sharing on pedagogy in teaching and learning of MIL. Yes, again, I do agree that we need to work together in order to get our own model of teaching MIL in Malaysian context. Okay, so looking at the chat room, I found that a few questions for Dr. Sabariah and Dr. Moos. So now it's open for question and answer session. I open for direct direct question to both speakers first, followed by question in the chat box. If you have any question, please ask, introduce yourself and ask a question. And stating the question to whom. All right. Open to participant. Is there any question? Or else I just read the question in the chat box. So first for Dr. Sabariah, I guess, what is the best advice we can give our journalist students so that they won't be disillusioned by the real situation in the industry? In addition, in the industry practice is different from mill training or university training. What do you think can be done to bridge the gap? Okay, Dr. Sabariah. This is a question from Dr. Jamaluddin.
Thank you, Dr. Normah, and thank you for the question, Dr. Jam. I mean, we must admit that there is a difference between what we teach and what is experienced by our fellow journalists And I think the best way to do it is to actually tell them about it. But what Dr. Emma and I did was to actually expose them to what happens in a real newsroom through our subject like news and features writing, in which we arrange like for a day, we call it Sehari Bersama Wartawan. In which they actually experience like a whole day with a journalist, tagging a journalist. They go to do assignments with the journalist, and then they go back to the newsroom and write the story and see how it's being edited. And they get to experience what it is like in a newsroom, in an editorial floor before actually being a journalist. So I think like these are some of those ways which we can expose our students to what's happening. Also, I think it's also important to encourage them or always to motivate them and remind them that these are the important ethics or things that they should try their very best to adhere to, even though there is this constraint of ownership and control. And then I think the other question is that what do I think can be done to bridge the gap between industry and MIL training? That's the thing. With MIL training, I mean, we can try as much as we can to inculcate MIL skills. For instance, how to fact check, how to verify, how to be more critical, how to be more discerning in, reading media texts. But at the end of the day, it's still up to that person themselves if they want to do it or not. So that's a bit of a challenge, because it's very difficult actually to change people's behavior. So this has been discussed in WHO as well, because I went for WHA Infodemic Manager training, and they were discussing about how do we inculcate this trust to COVID vaccine among anti-vaxxers. And, it has been agreed, I mean, in the discussion, it has been agreed that once they are, very pro-anti-vaxxer, it is very, very difficult to influence them to take the vaccine, because they are so, their mindset, their belief is already like that. So it's difficult. So what can we do? What we can do is to influence or to, make people who are on the fence, who are still undecided whether to believe or not to believe, to know the truth, to learn, to discern, to be selective, to be more critical in anything and everything that they read on the internet and even the newspapers. I think that's my answer, Dr. Normah. I hope that's sufficient.
Dr.
Okay.
Normah?
Yep.
Can I just add to that question, another dimension to that question to Dr. Sabariah?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Dr. Sab, in that sense, don't you think that we are actually having a scam here? Because we know that this is not going to work, but we are trying as, we keep saying, reiterating the discourse that we are trying our best, knowing that we are putting them into the crocodile's mouth anyway, because no matter how much energy they spend on fact checking, at the end of the day, the gatekeeper will have the final say. So what do you think of that? Are we in the scam business at the end of the day?
I don't think so. I don't think we are in a scam business, because I think there is an importance to create this awareness, despite knowing or being aware that there is this constraint of ownership and control. If you see, for instance, like Fact Check Lab is an independent fact-checking organization. So they are not biased. They are not controlled by the government or any, media agencies, so to say. So in that sense, it is still important to have that, to have an independent body to do that. To be honest, actually, like, when I kind of like what Bernama is doing, having a fact-checking desk, like what Ali Imran is saying. But to be honest, I mean, in the IFCN or International Fact-Checking Network, one of the requirements to be a credible and accredited IFCN member is for the organization to be non-government, non-biased, not a GLC. So that was why last week I asked the question whether my check would be, applying for IFCN accreditation, because that's it. We need an independent body to help do the fact checking, because we are aware of the constraints of media agencies and also government bodies. So establishment of an independent body is important. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Jam.
You did. Thank you very much. But I would like to also add my own experience to teaching semantics in journalism, the course that we shared before. So when the students wrote the article, I also asked them to be as inclusive as possible, alluding to what Dr. Musa said about reality. Because so when they do the interview, I said, why do you just interview women, not men? Why only the Malay, not Chinese or Indian? Because the more realities you bring into the news itself, the more, I think, more kind of valid, so it's a way of journalists doing the fact checking at their level by, when they ask an issue, don't just ask one party, but ask different parties or, other potential eyewitnesses. I think they have done that in BBC, for example, because in BBC, if you read the news in BBC website, at the end they will ask, were you at the, the scene of the, so do you see the thing, and do you have anything to say or to add to the news? I think adding different reality to the reality that is being presented will help to kind of validate the news as well. I think that's what I would like to share in terms of what we can do at the pedagogy level. I think
it would add on to the infodemic, Dr. Jam. I mean, having too many information would add on to that confusion and infodemic. So I think even though, I mean, like you said, BBC saying that, to add, if you were there to tell your side of the story, so to say, but it's very difficult to validate the credibility of the, so to say, eyewitness account as well. So that's the challenge that journalists have to face, and also media agencies have to face, because to actually, identify if the source is credible. So
but at the end of the day, as what Dr. Musa said in his talk, whose truth are we talking about? So at least we are liberating the idea of truth itself. There are different ways of saying things, different perspectives of telling a story. Perhaps at least, that's what I encourage the student to do, because I would like to see diversity in reporting as well. I'm not saying but my way is the best way, but I'm just sharing my practice when I taught journalism.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sam. There's a lot more question here. I think this question is directed to you too, Dr. Saab, from Malia. Accreditation for journalists is a good effort to ensure the standard of journalism. Who will be responsible for this? MPI, Jabatan Penerangan, or set up an independent body? What do you think?
In my personal opinion, I think it should be an independent body, because having Jabatan Penerangan do it, I'm sure they would, I think, consider it. But seeing that it is a government department or government body, government organization, there is like for me there is the concern of it being biased. So in my opinion, maybe an independent body or maybe MPI, because Malaysian Press Institute, so to say, the members, although they are working for media agencies, but in MPI they are quite independent, I think. Yeah.
Right. Is that answer you, Dr. Malia?
Yeah, I want to know how the accreditation process will be conducted. In what way the professionalism of the journalists can be measured? Can you explain on that?
Okay, so this was actually part of our discussion in our research. So the accreditation, the idea, this is just like a an initial idea. So the idea is that to ensure that everybody who works as a journalist has gone through proper media training, as in they would know, how to validate their news, how to look for credible sources, how to write a non-biased article, how to be balanced and fair in writing. So that's the idea. And then the idea popped up because like we were thinking that the lawyers, they have to go through their bar exam, they have to be called to the bar, then only are they accredited to be able to be litigation lawyers and to go in the court and all that. So we thought that it would be good to have journalists who has gone through trainings to actually know, because journalists, as we know, they do not everybody comes from journalism or media and communication background. So it's good to have them go through a proper training, then only to be accredited. But having said that, like when you talk about measuring their competency, we haven't really discussed about that, but we just thought that it would be good to have like a proper accreditation for journalists.
Okay, thank you very much for your feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saab. Another question for Dr. Mus, yeah?
Can I add to the answer by Prof. Sabariah? I agree with Prof. Sabariah that there's the line between accreditation is something we should think upon it. But when you look at from the other perspective, with accreditation comes control. Okay, with accreditation comes who can be in the media. So this is the issue that we need to fine-tune. But the thing in Malaysia, I know for a fact that Malaysian Press Institute organize such courses on how to do fact checking. They do the basic courses on journalism. So all the new journalists, irrespective of whether they are from communication or mass communication discipline graduates, they are being asked by these newspaper owners to attend these courses organized by MPI, because MPI is being financed not only by the government but also by all the respective newspaper organizations. I think that is a good avenue for them to be to train those non-communication or non-journalism graduates on this issue of accreditation. I think MPI should do a good job. But I agree with you. If we leave it to penerangan, I think we should leave the government out of this, because when you have the penerangan there, then the question of who will be allowed to go for a particular press conference. Because nowadays, if you go to any government agencies in press conference, when they are very particular about what is being taught, what is being written, what is being published, they will ask you for your press accreditation. And this press accreditation becomes a censorship point. Okay, so this is an issue among journalists, and I think it is a valid argument. But how do you walk the fine line? I agree with Prof. Jem. We need to be very open. We need to. It's easy said than done, actually. Okay, it is actually easier said than done, and we need to, because in education there's no such thing as apolitical. Whatever we teach is very politically biased. So we define the curriculum we teach is defined by the political consciousness of that day. So that's why how do we walk around? Because as lecturers, even though we are being assigned for certain courses, we can slant it to our own perspective. And from experience, I know some of my friends do that. So I'm not here to comment on that. But the liberty is at your is with the lecturers to decide what they want to teach and what they want to be not to teach. Back to you, from
Dr.
Normah.
Mus, Dr. Mus,
Yeah.
I wonder because I believe that even accreditation is a form of control, right? Accreditation is a form of control, so
Agreed.
it's prone to be manipulated by political parties and whatnot, because they can decide who can and who cannot, who can get access to it, who can't get access to it. You know,
Agreed.
so I think in the sense that if we keep going to the system, because I always believe, a philosopher once said, the thinking that results in this problem should not be used to solve the problem. So in a way, if we think about, you know, we are talking about ethics, we are talking about journalism, as in formal mainstream journalism. But when we look at the problem, we go to the new media and we blame, or we put a lot of blame on citizen journalism who are not trained to be journalists. But I think the problem is also in the mainstream media. News in mainstream media is lopsided, politically kind of inclined, you know, and there are a lot of different forms of censorship. And I think accreditation can also be a form of what do you call that, control and also censorship. So how do we go about it in liberating our journalists, actually?
Well, from there, I think I agree with you. It is a form of censorship, but nowadays, censorship works when the media is very centralized. This is when in the early 60s, early 70s, 80s. But now with the new millennium with media, social media, we have all kinds of platforms for us to share our views. Because the problem is now is when we write, we find that people are not reading. So should we continue to write? So it's like publishing a book. When you write a book and publish it, but there is not selling. So do you continue writing? Do you if you have a YouTube channel, if people are not watching, do you still upload? Because then it comes down to the question is, what was the reason? What is your reason of doing all of this? That as a Muslim, and you ask your nawaitul and niat. Okay, so this is where the people who are in this profession need to ponder on this question. I won't deny that accreditation is a form of censorship, but without some form of accreditation phone, it's a big problem, because sometimes everybody wants to be a journalist. With citizen journalism, we find that people are writing, people are sharing. If we go on WhatsApp, if there's an accident, people will start sharing all kind of pictures. Sometimes I feel it's so ashamed to look at the pictures. It's so gory, so scary. It gives me nightmares when I look at those kind of pictures. Because when I was a journalist, when I was covering my crimes deep, I will be assigned to go to all this crime scene. And when you look at the bodies of these victims, it can be very gory, and you can have nightmares. Okay, I've outgrown of that. Okay, I can live with that. But the younger generation, the young readers, the younger people who are on WhatsApp, these are the first time they look at this kind of pictures. It is this is where, how do you enforce a proper ethics? How do you teach these people? Because you can teach people how to fish, but are the people coming to you to learn how to fish? All right, it is easy. It is always easy. Like in PKP now, MCO, you can restrict these people from going out of this area, but you find out that the problem with COVID-19, the virus is spreading because the enemy is unseen, because it is already in society. Is how are you going to prevent this kind of thing. So this is it's not an easy task of accreditation. Okay, this is accreditation. I agree with you, Roger. I agree with you, Prof. Sabariah. All right. So you need to have how to go through the middle line. This is difficult. Okay, back to you, Prof. Normah.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Jem, do you want to ask Dr. Mus directly here, or you want me to read the question?
I can ask Dr. Mus.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Mus, I was very interested in your emphasis on technology, you know, the way technology has been used in teaching. But if you think about universities' focus, budget, and even critical mass, I don't think university or academicians should be playing catching up. You know, it's like when there's a new technology, we have to do it, you know, we keep teaching the students skills without actually teaching the philosophy of education itself, you know, the thinking behind whatever that we teach, or the philosophy behind our own subject matter. So my opinion is university must not be reduced to merely teaching skills because we are not factories. We are not producing just, you know, products like the way factories do. So do you agree with my statement? If yes, what do you need? What do you think we need to stick to? Let's say if you want to keep saying, okay, university should be like this and not like this. So what should we stick to so we can remain relevant? If no, why should we move on with the technology? Thank you.
Okay, if you want to catch up with technologies, I think this is going to be you will not be able to catch up. Okay, because if you look at the growth of let me talk in terms of Google, how did they be what they are today? Because this is a company that is run by engineers, by software engineers. The CEO, the top people are software engineers, and they are the majority of their employees are software engineers, and they have a different kind of mindset, and they allow Google's allow 30% of their time for these engineers to work on their own. But we do not have that same luxury at universities. At university, we always, I agree with you, Prof. Jeff, we don't have the money to buy everything. You ask Pusat Pengajian Media dan Komunikasi, when we want to upgrade the broadcasting equipment, they say, oh, we don't have the budget for that. This happens in UNIMAS, it also happens in all the other local universities. So how do we go about this? That is something is so difficult because without exposing students to the latest technologies, we are hindering their future development. Without technology, we are preventing different kind of information to be spread and different access to all kind of information to the people. So these are an issue that I don't know how the government will like to handle it, because I agree with you, university is not like any school, it's not like any production plant where you have a product that you produce, and this is where we found that the problem of asking our lecturers to fulfill certain KPIs, especially on Scopus and ISI. So we find that we will come to a point that we try to play around the system and get away with the things that we do. So this is not an easy issue to solve actually, unless we have all the money in the world. But if you go to the States, the same is happening. Not all the schools have all the latest technology. They are very selective in what they can offer. So I guess in these terms, under this scenario, when our students pick a university that they want to go through, they should learn about the university, what are the offers, what are the courses they are offering, what are the amenities that's being offered, what are the infrastructures available. Then In this case, then you decide. So I guess it's about the student deciding on what they want to learn, and when they learn, they should be aware that there are certain advantages and disadvantages when you pick a particular university. Okay.
Okay.
Can
Okay.
I add on to that, Dr. Normah?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I agree. Like having the most up to date technology is can benefit our students, but I think we need to think beyond that. It's more of how do they use this technology to empower them? How do they use this technology to create awareness? How do they use this technology to champion their rights? I think this also something that we need to think about, because I remember when I wanted to do my degree, actually I wanted to do a degree in broadcasting, and then my late father, he said that learning how to use the camera is something that you can learn along the way, because technology always changes. Like last time, it was a big video cam, and then now it's just a small video cam, and now they can even use a cell phone to record a short movie and all that. So I believe it's also important to actually create this awareness and what they can do with technology to empower themselves. So that's it. Thank you, Dr. Normah.
Wonderful, Sabariah. That's I love the answer, and Dr. Mus as well. But Dr. Normah, just last question for both speakers. This is also related to technology. My question is: do you think that the future of journalism ethics lie on the big data and data mining technology? Thank you.
This is directed to both speakers.
Both speakers, yeah.
Big data. The project. Thanks for this enlightening question. Actually, because the problem with big data, we are not teaching our students how to handle this big data. Because big data belongs to the big corporation. So are the big corporations sharing this thing? So we because nowadays we go on the internet, everything, every movement, every click is being recorded by somebody. If you're on Facebook, Facebook is sharing, is collecting and collating all this information. This is where they know what are your likes, what are your dislikes, who are your friends, who are your network, what is your gender, what are your preferences, what are your lifestyle. These are the things that they start to gather and start to analyze, start to predict the kind of information. That is why they start pop you when you on Facebook, you start getting all kind of pops ups, all kind of suggestion by Facebook that you don't even ask for them. So when you are aware of this, this is the problem where somebody else are using your data, and this data is not free, and they are not paying back. They should give us some form of payment for sharing this information. Because if you Google, it's the same thing. When you go with Google search, every time you click on the mouse, every time you start typing first word, you see that they already suggested several items that they think that you like. This is where page view is coming from. The page is coming from the owners of Google. They are getting all this algorithm, which is actually we are not teaching our students at journalism or communication schools, and this is where these are the subject matters that, to me, I think ought to be taught at the master's or PhD level. And this is where, unfortunately, in Malaysia, our curriculum is not tailored to this kind of things. All right. If we look at the universities that's offering communication, If you go to the north of Malaysia, at University Utara Malaysia, they say it is a management university. And a management university, I would presume, I would think that they will have a different viewpoint on how they can enrich the journalism field. But the content is similar to all the other universities, be it a USM, UPM, UKM, or everywhere else. So we are still using the Western model. We are not thinking out of the box. We are not offering something new. We are still doing the same thing that is offered. This is why, to me, we should offer something different at the master's level. This is why, in a way, I must applaud UKM for introducing strategic comm at the master's level with ITA as the co-institution offering this course. But when you look at the curriculum, are we talking about algorithm? Are we talking about data mining? Are we talking about how the people can benefit when they have the data, this huge data which is being collected every day, non-stop, 24 hours a day, every day of the week, every day of the month, every year is being collected day in until you die. So this, who owns this rich data is beyond the local, is beyond the ordinary people. I think it's beyond the local people. But if you are working with Cellcom, I know they are collecting this data because they have access to your account. If you are using Cellcom, you're using Maxis. Maxis is doing the same thing. And that is why sometimes I am really frustrated with all our telcos. They come up with all kinds of apps, okay, that is you to pay your monthly fees. But at the same time, they're using the apps as a platform to sell advertisement, which is, I think that is ridiculous because you don't have the time to look at this app, to look at all this advertisement. They should just, excuse me, they should just push this news to me on the SMS, then I can just delete it. Because when I'm on this app, because I know they can look at, they can trace what I'm doing with this app, because they know that I just use that app just to pay my subscription every month. That's all. After I paid, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to scroll all this, whatever offer that they want. So this is where they are not learning from Google. Google doesn't do that. It doesn't intrude into your search. If you look at Google, when they give you suggestion on the site that's relevant to your search, they don't give you pop-up messages. They don't give you advertisement that you don't want. It is only tailored advertisement. And advertisement on Google has changed the ballgame where all the advertisement agencies are having a problem of selling ads now. Because previously, when you have all this newspaper organization and television station, radio station in where they have the monopoly on information, you can sell. But now with Google, the money spent where you want to advertise is just peanuts, which is within reach of anybody. That means they have changed the way people advertise. That means any retailer, any small retailers in our areas, if they are interested, they can advertise in Google for peanuts. Previously, this is beyond the reach of any small retailers. That is why with big data, it has shifted. We need to tell the people, we need to show the people, educate the people that things are changing. It's not like the way it used to be. Okay, how do you create opportunities from this? What are the threats? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? These are the things that I think we have not yet done fully. I think this is where when we look back at the curriculum at the master's level, at PhD level, we should offer something different. When we create a curriculum, we are always Western biased. Whatever is in the West, we incorporate. And then we find that whatever we teach is sometimes is not relevant to how things are done locally. So I hope I agree with you, Prof. Jam, the ethics of big data is something different. It's not within the reach of a local newspaper organization. If they have this data, because now you see you can disseminate information. It's like previously a newspaper they only publish, then they found out that you cannot only publish newspaper, you have to be online, you have to be on YouTube, you have to be on blogs, you have to be on these other apps and everything. So how do you work within a different environment? And this is where I think at the master's level, after you introduce them at the undergraduate, we talk on this issue about strategic communication, about risk communication, about issue communication, which is beneficial to the new generation of professionals that we want to create in our country. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Mus, I think this is the issue that we need to ponder about. It is 8 past 12 now. So I think I need to end up the session.
Right.
Thank you again to Dr. Sab and Dr. Mus for this sharing session. And actually, I would like to discuss more, but time is too limited to do so. So thank you again for both speakers. And for participant, before we break, I would like to gently remind everyone that registration form is available in the chat box, and please do register yourself. We will start again our next session at 2 p.m. after the lunch break. And thank you all. Thank you to all trainers, and we will meet after the lunch break. Okay, thank you Dr. Mu, Dr. Sab. InsyaAllah jumpa lagi.